You know, there are some stories out there that they refuse to be solved, don't they?
So,
Tales that leave behind this trail of really perplexing questions, chilling possibilities.
yeah, they sort of linger, don't they?
Yeah.
Shadows of our understanding.
Exactly. Reminding us that reality, while it can often be stranger and honestly far more terrifying than anything we could possibly imagine. So today, we're going to share a collection of stories like that, drawn from various accounts we've looked into. We're not doing a super deep dive here, more like sharing these accounts. Our goal is just to tell these stories piece by piece and maybe explore why they stick with us.
Right, these are narratives, really. Meant to be engaging, maybe a little scary.
Definitely captivating. The tone today, well, it's going to match the unsettling nature of these stories, so settle in. These are the kind of tales that tend to cling to you. Okay, our first story. It starts with a disappearance, a really perplexing one that took a truly horrifying turn. This is the case of Mateusz Kowecki. He was a 30-year-old construction worker from Poland, but back in 2018, he was living and working over in Germany. His main focus really was earning a better wage abroad so he could be a good present father for the child he had on the way. Then, March 28th, 2018, everything changes. He gets this phone call.
The call.
Yeah, his fiancée, back in Poland, she'd gone into labor. So Mateusz, he immediately jumps into his car. It was a 1998 BMW 525, and he starts tearing across the German Autobahn, heading towards Lipiagra, Poland. It's about 402 miles away.
Quite a drive.
Yeah, and he was expected around 8 or 9 a.m. the next morning. Plenty of time, you'd think. But Mateusz, he never arrived. His last known communications were a call he made to his father. That was about 10:30 a.m. on March 29th. He said he was stuck in a traffic jam near Sessin, which is roughly 100 miles from Lipiagra.
So getting closer.
Getting closer. Around the same time, he sends a text to his fiancée saying he was about 2 hours away. And then just silence.
Nothing.
He just, as the accounts put it, basically dropped off the face of the earth.
And you can only imagine the panic. That silence was just devastating for the family. His fiancée, getting closer to giving birth. Her worry just grew and grew.
Of course.
Mateusz's phone just kept ringing out. When his mother tried to contact the Polish police, they refused to even file a report. Said he'd only been missing for a matter of hours.
That's frustrating.
It's incredibly frustrating. And what's really striking is the, frankly, blatant lack of cooperation between the German and Polish police forces.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to tracking his cell phone. Apparently his phone was still on for days, but the Polish police claimed they couldn't get a ping because it was a German carrier.
And the German police
wouldn't help because he'd supposedly disappeared on the Polish side of the border. He just left his family completely desperate. They had to launch their own private investigation, searching the entire route themselves.
Wow.
Meticulously searching. But they found absolutely nothing. It's a tragic example of how these jurisdictional gaps can just fail people.
Yeah, absolutely. So fast forward 6 months, September 12th, 2018. And this is where the truly horrifying discovery happens. A neighbor starts complaining about this awful smell. It's coming from Mateusz's family barn back in Hutgau, which is Mateusz's home village.
His home village. But
exactly. It's 370 miles from Lipiagra, completely off his route, not even close.
Okay.
So they investigate the barn. Inside a walled-off section, up in the ceiling, they found a human corpse.
Oh no. The findings were, shocking doesn't really cover it. The body, later identified as Mateusz, was incredibly decomposed, hard to recognize.
Yeah, but the head
had been severed.
Yet, despite that incredibly gruesome detail, the police determination was suicide.
It just defies the evidence. I mean, come on. One of his shoes was found in the barn with his severed foot still inside it.
It's still inside.
Yeah. His teeth were knocked out. There was dried viscera, internal matter on his clothing. These are clear signs of violence, dismemberment. Not a simple suicide.
And it gets even weirder, doesn't it? These bizarre little details.
Yeah.
Like they found an empty bottle of orange juice in his backpack. But his family was adamant Mateusz hated citrus. He never drank orange juice.
So they saw that as evidence, right?
Yeah.
Planted evidence.
Exactly. Planted by whoever murdered him. But the biggest lingering mystery, his car. That 1998 BMW 525.
Never found.
Along with his car keys, the vehicle registration just vanished. And nobody, not a single person, saw him or his car return to his home village.
And what's deeply unsettling, I think, is that both the Polish police and the state prosecutor just dug their heels in. They refused to investigate any further. Even when the family pleaded with them, they stuck to the suicide ruling.
So if it was a staged suicide designed to throw investigators off,
Then there's potentially a murderer still out there, somewhere in Central Europe, feeling pretty confident they literally got away with it. That thought, it's really disturbing.
It really is. Okay, let's shift gears to another story. Another man who vanished under really mysterious circumstances. But his fate, well, it was revealed years later, and in an equally baffling way. This is the disappearance of David Glenn Lewis. He was a successful attorney from Amarillo, Texas. By all accounts, a solid family man, pillar of his community, seemed to have it all, happy, successful life.
Then, January 31st, 1993, it's Super Bowl weekend. David's wife and daughter, they get back home from a shopping trip. House is empty.
Just empty.
Empty. No signs of forced entry, no struggle. Sandwiches were apparently in the fridge, ready to eat. The VCR was even set to record the Super Bowl game.
Yeah.
But David was just gone.
But there was something before that, wasn't there? A critical detail. David had actually confided in his wife shortly before he disappeared. He told her he believed his life was in danger.
His life was in danger. Yeah. But he refused to say more, telling her it was to protect her. His wife suspected it had something to do with his work as an attorney, maybe a vengeful former client, or perhaps this conflict of interest case involving his old law firm. He'd also told his father he planned to reveal the truth about misdeeds by that former firm at a deposition scheduled for just a week after he vanished. That detail really casts a different light on things.
Absolutely. So his car, a red Ford Explorer, it was found abandoned later, outside the Potter County Courts building, actually.
Okay.
But inside, his keys, his credit cards, driver's license, checkbook, all still there. Gave the police absolutely nothing to go on regarding where he might be. He just vanished from Amarillo.
Okay, but here's where the story takes a really sharp turn. About 12 hours after he was reported missing back in Texas, way over 1,000 miles away, in Yakima, Washington, Washington State, a man is seen walking erratically right down the center of Route 24. His behavior was so alarming, several drivers actually called it into the police.
Walking down the highway, right down the middle. Highway patrol was dispatched, but by the time they found him, he'd been tragically killed, like an accidental hit and run.
Oh, wow.
And he was a John Doe. No ID on him. He was wearing military-style clothing and heavy work boots, completely unidentified.
For 10 years. That's the amazing twist, right? 10 years later, 2003, there's this Washington homicide detective, Pat Dieter. He's researching cold cases, specifically looking into flaws in the National Crime Database, the NCIC system.
Okay.
And he decides, sort of on a whim, to Google the characteristics of some missing persons, including David Glenn Lewis from Texas.
Yeah.
And would you know it, he finds this picture coming out of Washington State, the John Doe from the 1993 hit and run.
And it looked like him.
Shockingly similar. The only real difference was David wore glasses. But Dieter dug a little deeper, found the inventory of the John Doe's personal effects. And sure enough, a pair of spectacles were listed.
No way.
DNA analysis eventually confirmed it. The John Doe victim was David Glenn Lewis, identified almost 12 years after he disappeared from Texas.
So, the questions are just bewildering. Why was he so far from home, 1,500 miles away in Washington?
Yeah.
And why the military-style gear, walking down a highway? Was he trying to hide out, lay low?
Well, that's where the theories diverge sharply. Texas police have always maintained that David left home on his own. No evidence of foul play, no evidence of threats, they say.
But his family
completely rejects that. They insist he was utterly terrified. Their theory is that he was trying to hide out, probably on the West Coast, trying to get as far off the grid as possible. That would explain the survival type deer.
Okay, so maybe the hit and run was just a tragic accident? Or even
a desperate suicide. Some believe that. But then there's the darker suspicion, fueled by that conflict of interest case he was about to testify in. The theory that he was actually tracked down by powerful people connected to that case. Tracked down and murdered to silence him. It's noted that after his death, all those cases involving his former firm just sort of faded away into nothingness. And the fact that he didn't rent a car in Washington, that he was on foot when he died, that leads some to believe he might have known he was being followed, trying to make himself harder to track.
And the driver of the hit and run?
Never found, never identified. So the Lewis case, it's this chilling reminder, isn't it, that sometimes the official story accident, suicide, might be covering up something much more sinister, especially when powerful interests are involved.
So was it a tragic accident, a desperate suicide, or, a calculated assassination by some shadowy network who literally got away with murder? We just don't know. All right, let's shift gears again. A different kind of unsettling mystery now. This one involves the discovery that, it truly defied explanation. We're in December 2014. A teenage boy is exploring this quiet, rarely used wooded area in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. He's about 30 feet off the nearest path. And he spots something that looks, in his words, extremely out of place. Something with this distinct air of morbidity about it.
Oh.
What he discovered was a severed human head.
Oh, my God.
But wait, it gets stranger. This wasn't the head of someone recently murdered. This head,
Oh, boy.
it was embalmed.
Preserved.
Embalmed.
Like professionally.
Apparently so. When the police finally arrived hours later, they noted its eyes were shut, but the mouth was wide open.
The way it was severed, that's key here, isn't it? The dismemberment itself.
Yes.
Michelle Vital, she's an anatomy professor who became a forensic artist. She examined the head in incredible detail. Her conclusion: whoever severed this head did it with the skill of an expert pathologist, someone with real anatomical training.
So not just anyone.
Definitely not. She said, and I quote, "This is not anybody going with a kitchen knife or anything remotely like that. It was well done and it was perfectly placed. She was dismembered professionally." That level of precision immediately points away from, say, a random act of violence.
And then, there's perhaps the most disturbing detail of all, found during the autopsy.
The eyes.
The victim's eyeballs had been removed, and they were replaced with small, red, rubber, bouncy balls.
Bouncy balls. It's just grotesque. It speaks to a certain kind of possessiveness or maybe a sick sense of humor. Whatever the motive, it's deeply disturbing.
So the forensics teams went to work. They did isotope testing. That's where they analyzed chemical signatures in tissues to figure out where a person might have lived or traveled.
Like a geographical fingerprint, almost.
Kinda, yeah. And the testing showed this woman, she seemed to be a bit of a nomad, lived or stayed in multiple states: West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Ohio, even New York. But not much evidence she'd ever lived right there in Beaver County where the head was found. But the embalming fluid, that caused huge problems. Made DNA matching almost impossible and determining the exact time of death really difficult. Surprisingly, initial findings suggested maybe no criminal element to her actual death, possibly cardiac arrest based on traces of heart medication found.
Wait, cardiac arrest? But the head was severed and the eyes replaced.
Exactly. Despite those initial findings, one homicide detective involved was reportedly very skeptical about a natural death. He'd seen too many cases where the killer showed this kind of possessiveness, tampering with the body.
Right.
And the police chief also pointed out the head seemed deliberately placed. It was too far off the road to have just been thrown from a passing car. Someone likely walked it in there, wanted it found eventually.
Which leads us to maybe the most plausible theory, disturbing as it is: the black market trade in human remains.
Body brokers.
Yeah, body brokers. People or organizations that acquire cadavers, sometimes from legitimate sources like donations, sometimes less legitimately. They then sell these remains, whole or in parts, for various purposes: medical training, research, sometimes even recreational or collector purposes. It's an industry with a documented history of abuses, unfortunately. It would explain the professional dismemberment, the embalming. It makes tracking the origin incredibly hard. This discovery really pulls back the curtain on that murky world.
So is there any hope of identifying her?
Well, the last real hope seems to lie in her dental work. It was extensive. Forensic dentists found a specific type of filling material that wasn't available before 2004.
So she died sometime after 2004.
Correct. That narrows it down slightly. But even with forensic facial reconstruction attempts, her identity is still a complete mystery years later.
It really makes you wonder, like the original account asked, do we really want to know the whole story behind it, or are we more likely to sleep easier remaining in blissful ignorance?
It's a fair question.
Okay, our final story for today. This one's a bit different. It's more personal, an unsettling encounter that really chilled one person to the core. Imagine this. You're working a late shift. It's an old-timey general store in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. You know, the kind of place that sells a bit of everything. And this man walks in. He's wearing this meticulously tailored black suit, fit him perfectly, looked expensive, gave off this air of wealth. But something about him was just profoundly off.
How so?
The person describing it said he was white as the cotton fields, so pale he was almost gone. He had these razor-sharp facial features and slick back, silver hair. Just striking, but unsettling. The oddity started almost right away. He asks for lighter fluid. Okay, normal enough. He pays with this huge roll of $100 bills.
Flashy.
Right. Then he takes out the shiny Zippo lighter, starts filling it, but just before he closes it, he accidentally spills a tiny drop of the lighter fluid onto his finger.
Okay.
Then right there in front of the clerk, he brings his finger up to his mouth and just sucks the drop of flammable liquid off his finger. Like he was tasting wine or something.
Got the lighter fluid.
Just a drop, but yeah. And then he gives this wolfish grin when he sees the clerk's completely stunned reaction.
Wow. Okay, that is beyond strange. The appearance, the money, and then that. It immediately creates this intense feeling of unease, right? Defies any normal explanation. Something is deeply wrong here.
Exactly. And then a young girl walks into the store. She looks maybe 14 years old, but she's dressed way younger, like toddler-style clothes, a little denim skirt.
14, dressed like a toddler.
Yeah. She calls the man Daddy and asks if she can use the bathroom. The man, he just hands her the keys to the store bathroom, his shiny Zippo, and also this small leather wallet.
Hands her the lighter and a wallet.
Yeah, which just intensified the clerk's discomfort. I mean, first, the girl looked absolutely nothing like the man. She was soft, curly-haired, it was all sharp angles and gaunt.
Right.
And her calling him Daddy in that childlike way, given her apparent age, it just felt wrong. Plus, the clerk got this immediate suspicion about that wallet. Thought maybe there was something illegal inside it.
Yeah, you get these subtle signals, don't you? None of them may be definitive proof of anything, but together, they build this overwhelming sense of wrongness. Your gut is just screaming that something is off, even if you can't quite pinpoint it.
Totally. So the girl comes out of the bathroom after a bit. The clerk noted she looked sleepy and dozy, and also he hadn't heard the toilet flush. She hands the items back to the man, the keys, the Zippo, the wallet, and gives this lazy, "Thank you, Daddy." But the clerk said, the way she said it, it was just dripping with sleaze. That was the word used. And the look the man gave her in return. The clerk described it as a look a father should never, ever give his daughter. It made him feel physically sick to his stomach. So the clerk, he's feeling really suspicious now, but what can he do? He tries to subtly signal his unease. As they're leaving, he looks them right in the eye and says pointedly, "Safe travels now."
Trying to convey something without saying it.
Right. And the man, he turns back. His whole demeanor changes. That formal politeness just drops away completely. He fixes the clerk with these dark, almost black eyes. The clerk said it was a look like he could have eaten me without salt there and then.
Chilly.
And then he says, "You ask a lot of questions, don't you, young man? Curiosity killed the cat."
Wow. That's a direct threat, essentially.
Yeah.
Or at least a very clear warning. It just confirms all those feelings of unease and fear, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And leaves you with absolutely no closure, just wondering, who were they? What was really going on?
Exactly. And that's where the story ends. No resolution, just that terrifying encounter, the unanswered questions, and that ominous warning, curiosity killed the cat. Just echoing. You know, these stories, they all kind of illustrate this deep human need we have for answers, don't they? For closure, especially when faced with mysteries this unsettling.
Definitely. We want things to make sense.
Yeah. And they remind us that sometimes, you know, despite everyone's best efforts, despite investigations, the truth just stays hidden. All we're left with are these disturbing fragments, these questions that just hang in the air. These are tales where that veil between what we know and what we don't, it just stays firmly drawn. A reminder that there really are shadows out there in the world that maybe will never be fully illuminated. And with that, well, our time for sharing these particular stories is at an end for today. We hope these tales have captivated you and maybe even haunted you just a little bit.
Hopefully in a good way, if that makes sense for these kinds of stories.
Right. Until next time, remember to stay curious, but perhaps also, a little cautious might be good advice too. Oh, and if you find these kinds of chilling stories intriguing, you should definitely check out our friends over at Horror Docs.
Yeah, they do great work.
You can find them easily on YouTube. Please, if you have a moment, show them some support, like their videos, maybe share the content, and subscribe to their channel. It really helps them keep bringing more of these incredible and often terrifying stories to light.
It does make a difference.
It really does. So, from both of us here, goodbye for now.